Hello, New Zealand, and welcome to Political Playback. And Simon O'Connor, nice to have you back. This is episode 41.
There we go. Unmute myself. The classic problem. I'm sure a lot of people in the country are delighted that I'm muting myself. But no, it's amazing. 41. I still look
Yeah.
back, Bob, when we first talked about it, and here we are months later. It's exciting.
Yeah, I can hear your wife cheering in the background that you were actually quiet for about 3 seconds. So well done. Okay, look, we've got a lot of topics to get into. If you would like to comment, we can see your comments coming through, I think. Let me just check. And they will be through our YouTube channel. So if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on a Family First Facebook account, then we will see your comments come through. But of course, you may be watching somewhere else. And I tell you what, we are everywhere. We're on X, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram. We're also on Substack, and we're on YouTube and Facebook, and a number of accounts on Facebook. So I guess it's like we're going to everybody's house, Simon, even if they don't want us. We are knocking on the door and we want to come in and we want to indoctrinate them with some social conservatism. So that sounds awesome, doesn't it?
It does. I'm not sure. It's not indoctrination. It's just sharing the good news.
Yeah. I know. I'm just speaking from, people who, from the far right perspective anyway. Right, let's get straight into our topics. Now, this was an interesting one. Okay, so we've got a hospice. I mean, I think both you and I are concerned about funding of hospices. This is Totra Hospice, so this is South Auckland. So this is one close to me and dear to my heart because it's very local. They say that they're cutting the number of people they care for in their final days by almost a third. They get 8.8 million from the government. They reckon it doesn't cover the wage bill. But Health Minister Simeon Brown says, well, look, they've had some increased funding, and actually this hospice gets 84% of its total funding, whereas most hospices only get 50 to 55%. So just before you comment on that, Simon, I did a little bit of investigation with my accounting cap on. Had a look at their annual accounts. And so this is, let me just enlarge that. You'll see there that their revenue from fundraising, so the shaded bit is this year, last year, 2024, and the white is 2023. There's been a drop in revenue from fundraising. There's been a drop in trusts and grants. There's been a drop in fundraising in general. In fact, the only thing that's improved a little bit is their bequest income. I have a theory, Simon, that I'm going to run past you in a minute. And then there's some financial statements. And it's interesting because the article says that the government, the head of the hospice says they only get 8.8 from the government. But I looked at their statistics and you'll see there revenue from government contracts. Well, it's 8.1 in 2023, but it's actually gone up to 9.6 million. So I'm not sure where Totra Hospice is getting 8.8 million from. But let me give you my theory, Simon. This is the only hospice in New Zealand that allows euthanasia. And I'm just wondering whether they're getting a little bit of kickback and they're not raising as much money because some people just don't like the association of hospices and euthanasia. What do you reckon?
Oh, I think you're right on the money. I think that, as you mentioned, they're the only hospice that allows and permits euthanasia. In fact, they're sort of becoming supporters of euthanasia. I've noted there are a number of talks and trying, in a sense, to undermine palliative care because people will know, well, I hope people know listening here tonight, palliative care, hospice care is the opposite of euthanasia. They don't match. There's no marriage made in heaven on this one. They're complete opposites. But Totara has decided to compromise its values. And I think you're right. I think a number of donors will have said, no, we're not funding this anymore. And I think it just shows in the balance sheets. I mean, it's not a surprise that bequests are going up. I mean, more people are dying. That's just natural. But I think also there's almost another arrogance at play here, Bob, complaining about the government funding in a way that the other hospices generally are not. And I think that sort of euthanasia pro-death attitude also plays into sort of an entitlement. And I think that's perhaps coming through. So let's be clear. We'd love to see more funding for all hospices. I think there's a 3% increase being offered. Of course, we'd want more. But to finish, isn't it striking? It's only Totara Hospice that's gone running to the media, quite entitled, clearly not getting its own figures wrong, and not admitting that it's most likely because of their euthanasia stand, being supportive of assisted suicide and euthanasia, that their fundraising is down.
Yeah, Totra Hospice has always been the darling of the media, and the reason is, I think, one, because of their stance on this. They've been the one kind of renegade hospice when it comes to euthanasia, and so that's why I don't know if you've seen on TVNZ Plus a documentary on the hospice. Look, they do some fantastic work, no doubt about it. Very important service. I'd like to see all hospices get significantly more funding. I think that should be a priority because the danger is, as you well know, Simon, and we've argued this, haven't we? The elephant in the room for euthanasia is that it's very cheap to euthanize somebody as opposed to good quality, dying with dignity with appropriate and world class palliative care, which is what I think everybody is entitled to. But, the media, I notice they always run to Totra Hospice for comment because they are the outlier. And unfortunately, they are proving that as costs increase, there's going to be coercion and pressure on vulnerable people to think I can save money by taking euthanasia. You argued that in Parliament, didn't you?
I did. Look, it's an absolute given. I mean, there's all sorts of pressures, subtle and not so subtle, in the end of life space.
Mm,
Be it just the sense of a burden. I mean, that's very clear in a lot of elderly. They feel like a burden. And you know what? Elderly, including probably at Totara Hospice, reading those headlines, may well be thinking, not out loud, but might be thinking, oh, well, be better just for me to disappear and give my bed to someone else. So you can see that the subtlety, but it is
mm,
quite dangerous. But again, it doesn't
yeah,
surprise me that they're the darling of the legacy
mm,
media because they've compromised the values of palliative care.
yeah,
And so that's
yeah.
convenient for, by and large, a media in New Zealand that is keen, if not complicit, in promoting euthanasia and assisted suicide.
So I'm doing a bit of a play on the title there. Is it the hospice cries foul, or is it that the hospice's cries are foul? I mean, because as an accountant, I look at their figures and they don't actually quite add up to what they're saying. And maybe they need to go back and look at some of their fundraising and ask themselves, why is their fundraising down? Because I think most people think hospices deserve support. So why the decrease? Anyway, that's an interesting question. Let's move to more figures from an accountant. Actually, sorry, I just meant to show the slide. So, uh, Totra Hospice are part of a lobby group to expand euthanasia laws. And this was a compilation that I just took from a One News article where Totra Hospice are calling for ending of the gag clause. So it means that doctors can suggest euthanasia. Totra Hospice was pushing for expanding the 6-month eligibility, and also they want to clarify the conscientious objection clause. So a little bit of activism there. Sorry, I meant to show you that slide, Simon, but you probably
No,
already
that's
aware
right. I
of
mean,
that.
yeah, I mean, all three of these are dangerous for a variety of reasons, and I've often picked up on the top one because
Mm,
euthanasia is often strongly couched as being about autonomy and choice, and
mm,
yet pro-death advocates and the Totara Hospice amongst them are arguing that the choice of doctors, the choice of medical health professionals should be removed.
yeah,
As to in hospices, they want to force other hospices to have to allow euthanasia on their
mm,
premises. As I keep saying, that's the antithesis, the opposite of the palliative care movement. So I'm sad to say the likes of Totara backing this makes them the fox in the henhouse. And again, it's one of the reasons they're the media darlings and
mm,
probably for the pro-death camp because it enables them to say, oh, no, no, not all the
mm,
hospices agree. So we've got this one over here that's happy to
mm,
terminate its patients.
mm,
And as you say, and let's be fair, they do an amazing amount of work too, great
mm,
care, but palliative care cannot sit beside
mm.
euthanasia. They're incompatible.
Actually, I like your analogy. You often talk about they call about the right to choose, but by forcing hospices and workers to have to be part of euthanasia, you're actually taking away their right to choose.
Oh, 100%. It's an absolute hypocrisy. I mean, I would love to see politicians and media pick up on this more. I mean, it's not particularly rocket science, but they
Mm,
are more than happy to strong arm. And the thing I've noted
mm,
over time in these more fraught ethical areas, so let's, bring in the big A, let's talk abortion as well. The more deathly a causes, in this case, euthanasia or abortion, the more coercion is involved. They need to force people against their objections. to try and normalize it. It's, the act of violence itself becomes an act of violence against people who don't want to be part of it. But, that's just the nature of this death cult, if I could
Yeah.
be so blunt.
Yeah. This comment was interesting. It would be interesting to see the percentage of people that have applied for assisted death and have their application denied in New Zealand. Those stats are actually on our website, and I can go looking. But do you know off the top of your head, Simon? I think to mind it's about that 2/3 successful. Does that sound right?
Look, it's a great question by Koluk Tokoingwe. Luke is my name, for those wondering what it says. But Luke, it's a great question. I don't have them to hand. There's lots of applications, and a smaller percentage, Bob might be right, only about 30% go on through. Those specifically denied, though, I think might actually be a smaller number. So there's two steps to this ultimately, Bob and to Luke. There's the applications. There are some which are denied, but more often it's that people are accepted but do not carry on through. In other words, the actual number of euthanasia deaths is smaller than the total number of applications.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just reading here off our media release. There was an 11% increase in assisted deaths in the last 12 months. That was between 2022 and 2023, but there was a 23% increase. So kind of that would suggest about half are successful. And the most disturbing thing is that 1 in 4 applicants weren't receiving palliative care. So they're actually making the decision to get euthanasia before they've even gone down the track of asking if palliative care is suitable. I'm sure somebody will know the percentage and they'll tell me in the comments. So I will keep an eye out for that just while we move on to our other topics. All right, second topic is the IRD. Back to our figures. Although the IRD can't figure out what is a woman. And what happened was that a employee basically lost her bid to claim for unjustified disadvantage and constructive dismissal. She made comments that gave hurty feelings to some other IRD workers. She had worked there for 14 years. She was reprimanded because apparently on the intranet for IRD, they announced that the department would be putting period products in both male and female bathrooms because apparently males need period products. And she posted, because she knows biology, "This is awesome. Shame it took so long coming, and interesting now that men can menstruate. Free period products are available in Inland Revenue bathrooms." She got in trouble because the Rainbow Network got hurty feelings and got upset and complained. And in the end, she felt, she said she was disciplined. She felt she didn't have the opportunity for a support person, affected her prospects for promotion. It silenced her. And Inland Revenue had imposed a bathroom policy on her without consultation. Actually, I'm not sure about that last one because I don't think as a woman it really imposes on her, isn't it? It's not, the question is, are dudes allowed in the women's toilet at IRD? But anyway, let's just deal with the whole freedom of speech and hurting people's feelings and being told you can't say things that might hurt people's feelings. It suggests that this whole wokeness being rammed down in public departments is still rampant.
Oh, very much so, and sadly so. I mean, she should be allowed to express her opinion, and I'm sorry if some people are offended. I'm sure she's offended in equal measure. And I noted in some of the reporting, and it will be the various rainbow networks, because they've infiltrated and set up quite strongly into these organizations. Anyone who dares to question any of this gender identity element, or anything else, by the way, of note within the progressive cause, will be slammed very quickly. But they did it, Bob, all in the name of, again, diversity, inclusion, and tolerance. IRD is a inclusionary place to work. Except for this woman, you're not to be included. Your view is not to be heard. In fact, we're going to make your life exceptionally difficult. So I suspect a lot of people listening may have themselves experienced this, will know of friends or family, particularly in the public service. You are censored on certain topics. And it should be deeply, deeply worrying. In fact, Bob, there was a survey out, was it last week or the week before, that said 30%, so 30% of our public servants do not feel they can talk freely and frankly in the civil service. And this is meant to be the place to guide our public policy. and they're
mm,
being hounded just like this woman was.
yeah. Okay. Catherine says, oh, press that button. Period products are not even that expensive. Why is the taxpayer footing the bill for other people's hygiene needs? Actually, Nancy Margaret answers that and says, because everyone's lost their marbles. You got a fan here, Simon. Adrian says, I'll say it again, Simon for Prime Minister, party for families, decency and morals. So there we are. Someone did raise the point that, well, what about Winston? Wasn't he tackling this? And that's true. There was a bill put forward, I think, end of last year to end the left-wing social engineering and diversity targets, get rid of some of the wokeness. This is just a reminder, Simon, that Winston, with only 6% of the vote at the last election, can make a lot of noise and can, come up with a pushback against this wokeness and this shutting down of free speech. But at the same time, he's got to get everybody in Parliament on board, and there just isn't the willpower or the backbone at the moment, is there?
No, there isn't. I mean, a lot of what Winston or New Zealand First are doing around bills like this, I think, was it last week we were talking about their flag one.
Flags. Yep.
It's a signal. Like they're not going to get the votes in Parliament.
Mm.
Obviously, the left bloc are committed to progressive causes, to all this virtue signalling, which of course is the only thing that period products in men's bathrooms are all about. So he's got to keep working on it. His colleagues. ACT doesn't seem to get particularly committed to these things, and National runs a mile. But he's sending a signal, and arguably, it's contributing to actually their polling increase. And again, we discussed last week, because I think most people are actually fed up with this. They're not militant in the streets about it, but at one level, and I've forgotten who it was who made the comment, that's all your taxpayer money. And it's not just the fact that they're funding period products in males' bathrooms. There'd have been a whole lot of discussion and policy, and God knows how much money was spent. So next time you're paying your taxes, realize that it's going to insane things like this. It's not actually going to make the tax system more efficient or more surgeries for children or more housing for the homeless. No, it's going into these sort of woke DEI initiatives to make the elites feel good about themselves.
Okay, right, let's move on. And topic number 3 is, this one bugs me, rules for some and not for others. And look, I can speak from experience on this. Firstly, Family First, I remember us getting, during the anti-smacking debate, we got a letter from the Charities Board saying you need to stop speaking up against laws and stop politicking, etc. You're not supposed to be a lobby group. This is at the time we were up against groups like Bernardo's and Plunkett and others who were campaigning on the other side, but I don't think they got the same letters. And then, of course, the Charities Board came against us because, they said we weren't charitable. I can tell you, whenever we had to file returns, like after the cannabis referendum and after various elections when we put out value your vote, they're pretty strict. They follow us up and they say this stuff is due and you need to get onto it. But now we've got Te Pāti Māori, who basically they haven't met the deadlines for last year's financial statements. And I note the year before, they eventually put them in late, but it was missing information, including the audit report. Even Labor haven't got an audit report on their latest ones because apparently they're transitioning. I stopped there deliberately. They're transitioning to a new set of accounting practices. But look, with the Māori Party, I just get the impression that everybody is scared to come down hard on just making them be compliant because they don't want to be called racists. And it's just incredible, in my view, what the Te Pāti Māori are getting away with. And I know we're going to talk about the by-election shortly, and there's some whole lot of red flags around that. But why is it that certain groups, got a police warning? Where's the Electoral Commission when they need to just basically enforce the law?
I think you've nailed it. It's really part of the discourse. Anything to do with the Māori Party, Māori or Indigenous rights, the treaty. And by the way, there's an array of views on all those topics. But by and large, mainstream media, it looks like the police, the Electoral Commission get cold feet for the reason you just said. They don't want to be called racist. And part of it too is they've bought into that intersectionality argument, which really simply is there's the oppressors and the oppressed. And Te Pāti Māori have put themselves as the oppressed, which means it doesn't matter what they do, illegally or otherwise, they're always going to market themselves as being oppressed, and so they get a free ride. If this was the National Party, they'd be being dragged,
Yep.
rightly, by the way,
Yep.
through the media at the moment. But yeah, 2 years now, this political party have not done the most basic
Yep.
requirements around finances. And I
Yep.
think people should be very concerned about that for two reasons. One, there is probably something crooked going on. There's only one of two explanations, or a mix of both, Bob. Either they're hiding something, financial mismanagement, or the other is an arrogance, a hubris of the highest order, that the Maori Party don't feel that they need to act according to the laws of this country, that they're above it. And I just think, final thought on this. Before I hand back to you, there should be a warning to anyone who supports the Maori Party or sees them as having any political future in this country, because A, they're crooked, and B, they really just don't believe in law. They believe in just their own wants. I mean, they'd probably call it tikanga, but that's hardly a way to build a cohesive society.
Well, this was my word of the week on Straight Talk on Monday night. I don't know if you've heard it. Your caucasity
Caucasity.
never fails.
Caucasity. Gosh.
Caucasity, and it's a combination of Caucasian and audacity. So, as a white person, Simon, your audacity to suggest that there's anything going wrong with Te Pāti Māori, even though there's major questions and red flags over the whole electorate. What's the electorate that now has the by-election? One of the Māori electorates, isn't
So
it?
it's the Tamaki Makaurau, so it's one of
Yeah,
the seven Maori seats. So it's
yeah,
basically the greater Auckland area. But I mean,
yeah,
that's classic John Tamaheri. Just call everyone racist. He
yeah,
believes he's just above it all. And again, I
yeah,
think people need to see this as a warning for the
mm,
type of politics these guys are promoting. They really want to be the feudal lords, unquestioned, doing whatever they want with everybody else's money. They
yeah.
don't care about law. They don't care about proper process. They don't care about transparency, and they'll just abuse anyone who opposes them. I mean, what more warning do people need about how dangerous the likes of Te Pāti Māori are?
And of course, the problem that really sticks in my graw is the fact that you've got Waiparota Trust, which is supposed to be a charitable organisation, which has been there's accusations of funding Te Pāti Māori, running festivals. There's some major questions, and where's the investigation gone on that? I can guarantee that if Family First was bankrolling some political party, which we're not, by the way, but if we were, they would be coming down like a ton of bricks. But it's just like nobody wants to touch it. It just amazes me. Interestingly, Labor has been told off by Te Pāti Māori because reckons in the by-election that Te Pāti Māori is basically saying they're being greedy by standing a candidate. I'm not surprised. I'm interested to hear what you think, having been in the political circles for 12 years in Parliament. I'm not surprised Labor is standing, because I think they would want the seat back, because they actually want to show Aucklanders that they're going to win back the Māori seats throughout New Zealand, which, all went to Te Pāti Māori. So that doesn't surprise me, but a little bit of a pillow fight amongst parties on the left at the moment.
There is. I mean, this is one of the ironies, if not hypocrisies, isn't it, Bob? The only ones being
Mm,
greedy here are the Maori Party, who just assume, a little bit like we're talking about their finances, they just
mm,
assume that by right they should have
mm,
this. It should just be
mm,
given to them.
mm,
I mean, it's quite an extraordinary statement. I mean, our
yeah,
politics is based on democracy, which again, I don't think the Maori Party understand, which is
yeah,
any political party, any independent person can put their hand up and contest a seat.
yeah.
Labor has traditionally held it. In fact, I would make the statement there's good evidence that Labor had the seat effectively stolen from
Yeah.
them by
I,
Te Pāti
I would
Māori last
say
time. That's
beyond a doubt, beyond a doubt.
Yep. So this is all the Manarewa Marae stuff, if viewers are
Mm,
wondering what we're talking about, which I do apologise, I have forgotten the MP who passed away, but she was the CEO
mm,
of that marae, collecting
mm,
people's data through COVID and other statistical events. And
mm,
long and short, there seems to be very good evidence that they were using that to then target voters for her to ultimately
mm,
win over Penny Harare there in the photo by 42 votes. So I expect Labor to win it back.
mm.
And why wouldn't he fight back? He probably legitimately feels it was stolen from him.
Yeah, yeah. Now, just to explain, there's a quirk in the system whereby one thing I found ironic is that the Party Māori are telling Labour they shouldn't stand in the seat, because if Pene Henare wins it, which I expect he will, because everyone will be watching the seat now, I expect he'll win. And the argument by Te Pāti Māori is they say, well, he's already in Parliament. Te Pāti Māori, if they win, they can bring in another Māori MP, which is the ex-TV broadcaster. I can't remember her name, but media have been loving coverage of that. But if Pene Henare wins the seat, then the next list member on Labour comes in, and guess what the next list member is? Māori. So that argument just doesn't wash. Look, we're guilty of a whole lot of, what was the word? Caucasity. I just want to remind viewers that if it was ACT or New Zealand First or National or Labour or the Greens acting like Te Pāti Māori, we'd be calling them out as well, because at the end of the day, we want fair elections, and we want fairness, and we want accountability from all parties. But look, just go back to that point. Can you just explain? There's like a overhang, isn't there, where if Pene Henare wins the seat, then are we going to get an extra MP, another one?
More that Labour's going to get another MP, and the proportion of Parliament changes. The quirk is nothing illegal. I better quickly signal that the dynamic that we're about to talk about is exactly what happened with Andrew Bailey as well.
Yeah.
And other MPs. So long and short, the Māori Party currently have more MPs in Parliament than their percentage of party vote. That's why they call it an overhang, because they won more seats. So they won most of the Māori seats, not all, but most of them, but got a very low percentage of the vote. So that's the first thing. Hence, with this death, and if they lose the by-election, the overhang begins to correct itself. But for Penny to bring another person in, so if Pene Henare wins, he moves from being a list MP to being an electorate MP. So he has to resign bizarrely as a list MP, and then go in as an electorate one, and then they can bring another listie in. So it's just, as you say, it is a quirk, but I do want to stress to viewers, there's nothing illegal, there's no shenanigans here. Penny's allowed to compete as a list MP. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We keep saying, we suspect he'll win. And it's not greedy. Te Pāti Māori just have to realise that they're not extra entitled in this country simply because they are the Māori Party.
Okay, Rosie kindly reminds us, Takataya Tash Kemp, who passed away, correct. So, that was a tragedy, really, that would have shocked Parliament, shocked, many of us, because it was just so sudden. Just while we're talking about compliance and rules for some but not for others, there's this other group called Fact Aotearoa. And apparently, now what do they do? Their modus operandi is, they're one of these disinformation groups, but they're a charity, ironically. And they call themselves a misinformation watchdog. They were given $50,000 by the former Labour-led government, and another $10,000 from Internet New Zealand, which is interesting. And just days before the last election, they actually put out a press release discouraging people to vote for New Zealand First. Discourage. Mm-hmm. They said a vote for New Zealand First is a vote for conspiracy theorists. So that doesn't sound like a charity to me. I can guarantee, once again, Family First, when we were a registered charity, I was really careful around our legal responsibility around value your vote, that we didn't tell people who to vote for or not to vote for. You cannot endorse or disendorse anyone. All we did was put up the facts in the voting record. But here's a group. They seem to be avoiding official scrutiny, and the charities board seem to be half asleep. Maybe they're still celebrating getting us deregistered. I don't know. What's going on here?
Well, I think Sue is right. There's a lot of confusion now in the charity sector as a result of the Family
This
First.
Is Sue Barker?
Barker, did I say Sue?
No, you just said Sue.
Just Sue. Oh, first name terms.
First name basis. Or your friends.
Did actually a really good podcast with her a few months back. I'd recommend people check that out on the Family First
Yep.
YouTube or our webpage. But no,
Yep.
Sue Barker, expert in charity law. But long and short, it's very confusing now of what a charity is and is not supposed to do. But one thing is clear, or should be clear, is that a charity is not acting for political purposes. And in this case, Fact Aotearoa was outright attacking a political party and trying to sway people's votes. And I would make a quick distinction there, Bob. Just like you have done and continue to do, Barnardo's or Greenpeace or Tier Fund or whatever, of course they're going to critique policies. But, like Fact did, they went and said, do not vote for New Zealand First. That is breaching the charity law, left, right, and centre. And also they were taking government's money. So dear old Jacinda Ardern, she was responsible for giving them a lot of money. And the little intriguing curio on top of it, a group called Internet New Zealand also gave them money. And why that's interesting is because Fact Aotearoa is filled with far left
Yes.
revolutionary activists.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up. Go and look up Chris Lynch's Media or Centrist. You can see the names. Far left, very extreme. One of them is called Stephen Judd, who now heads up Internet New Zealand, and again bringing quite far left ideas in and continuing the same behaviour as they try to turn Internet New Zealand. So this is the group that monitors all the domain names in New Zealand. He's fighting a war with the Free Speech Union because Steve Judd and the new team he has there are trying to inject a lot of ideology into Internet New Zealand now. And he's running about calling anyone who challenges him misinformation purveyors.
Oh.
So it's just a continuation of that very far left behaviour. And good on Winston calling it out. I think they should be investigated, deregistered, and forced actually to pay the money back.
If you're called populist or conspiracist or full of misinformation, you know that you're winning the debate. They've run out of arguments and all they can do is throw labels. You made a very good point, and I just want to do a unscheduled advertisement here that you talked about reading it on our website. Look, all our resources and our conversations is available in the way you want to view it, so you can watch it as you are now. But we're also summarising our shows, and we're also doing a bit of writing. Simon's been writing prolifically. We're having to proofread all his writing and his spelling and grammar, but some fantastic articles. So if you prefer reading, you can read, and you can read a summary of these shows. And also we're on Spotify, so you can listen while you're driving or mowing the lawns, as I often listen to podcasts when I'm mowing the lawns, one of my favourite ways. Unfortunately, I haven't quite got a ride on yet, so that's unfortunate. All right, let's continue. And my question is the media turning on Luxon, well, anymore? Audrey Young did this article, who would take over if Luxon fell under a bus? And in the article, I think Simon, she actually sort of says, well, it's not as though he is going to fall under a bus or a bus is heading towards him. His leadership isn't under threat. I mean, is this mischief making? Is this trying to undermine or create instability in the National Caucus, or do you think it's already there and Audrey Young is actually just saying the quiet part out loud?
I think it's a bit of both, a bit of column A and a bit of column B. I think it is mischief. Anytime you're talking about replacing a leader, it is mischief. And particularly in this circumstance, we've had months of speculation. It's gone relatively quiet, but Audrey, for whatever reason, is just stirring it again. I think she probably is picking up on still a little bit of discontent. Personally, I think for Christopher, things have stabilised from a few months ago where we were talking, where things were actually pretty bad for him at one point. But again, I don't recall articles like this, for example, when John Key was Prime Minister, or even when Jacinda was. It's just not really the done thing. So it is Audrey being a bit mischievous. She's possibly, I was about to mix up two words there. She's possibly picking up. As probable or possible?
Spell that.
like your caudacity. Just start blending things. But she probably is picking up on a little bit. But this will not have gone down well on the ninth floor, the Prime Minister's office. It's never a good thing
Mm.
for journalists or anyone to be speculating who's going to replace you.
Actually, I mean, that's a very good point. I cannot remember when Jacinda's leadership was ever discussed. I mean, that's why when she did resign, it took everybody by such surprise because she was, she was being loved. There was a love fest with the media, and I can't remember Audrey Young sort of saying, "Well, who's going to take over Jacinda?" I mean, she would have been fired from the newspaper for suggesting that almost, wouldn't she? Did it feel like that?
Would have been the one source of truth. Yeah, they just didn't go there. And I mean, I read Audrey's article very much that, oh, look, it's there's no problem at the moment. It's all fine. It's just speculative. And I thought, well, it's
Mm,
almost a case of the lady doth protest too much. Again,
mm,
it's not a good look. Prime
mm.
ministers do not want people thinking about who could replace them.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting comment from Sandy. What amazes me is, oh, hang on, this one. What amazes me is that despite their best efforts, the media have not managed to break up the coalition. Maybe we could give Chris Luxon a bit of credit for keeping strong personalities like Winston and David together. I think that's a very good point, Simon. I think that is true. The media have tried their best, and they predicted that it would be a three-headed monster that would last a couple of months. In fact, they are doing very well, heading towards their second-year anniversary.
Yeah, I think so. Firstly, you're right. The media throws all and everything at them, any attempt at a potential scandal. But secondly, I think, it probably reflects on Luxon's leadership skills. I mean, he
Mm,
does have a strong corporate background. He knows
yeah,
how to manage people. But I think
mm,
the other is it's not really a three-headed monster. And why I say that is he's clearly not prepared to push himself too much into public. In other words, he doesn't need to get into particularly, I don't know, what's the right word, fierce arguments with Winston or David in public. He just sort of lets them be. And
yeah.
yeah, so they sort of squabble. He just sort of acts and goes about quietly. I'd say if he was a much stronger leader, much more vocal, I think we'd see more problems, actually. So his
Yeah.
style is working. I think it's actually a really good comment.
Okay, I'm actually going to just jump a topic because you've segued into it beautifully, which is a radio term for you change topics without people realizing. And it's actually this issue around David Seymour writing a letter to the UN because they wrote to the government. And then he basically got told off by Christopher Luxon for replying and said, it's not your job, that's Winston Peters. This was Christopher Luxon commenting on it.
Look, Winston Peters is our Minister of Foreign Affairs. He engages and handles our relationship with the United Nations. The letter raised a series of issues. I think the whole letter was a total waste of time, to be honest with you. But our government, our response will come from Winston Peters. The letter, I think all of us in government can read the letter and say, hey, it's total bunkum. But I mean, the UN wrote us a letter with 4 or 5, issues that were raised. You read the letter and it's not, it is a waste of time to read it, to be honest. We all agree that the substance of it's not there.
So there's probably two issues just around this, Simon, that I'm keen to ask you is firstly, the UN even writing the letter in the first place and trying to insert itself into New Zealand politics. And the second thing is this a little bit awkward that you've got the Prime Minister telling the Deputy Prime Minister off in public? I mean, it's quite a public telling off, isn't it?
Well, let's maybe start with that one. Yeah, it is awkward. It's untidy. It's one of those things that just gives a bit of an impression into the
Mm,
public. You don't have to be following it very closely. You're just going, oh, David Seymour's done something and he's being told off. It does look untidy. And,
mm,
Labor's trying to exploit that, as you'd expect. Any opposition party would. I think they're over-egging it to suggest there's a major
mm.
crisis. Had David drafted the letter just as an ACT Party MP or the leader of the ACT Party, he'd be fine.
Right.
But actually, this is Winston's domain. And of course, there's no real love lost between Winston and David, despite them
Mm,
working together. So, unfortunately for David, he did tread into Winston's territory. It's the Minister of Foreign Affairs' responsibility to engage the UN, and ministers protect their patches very carefully. So at the very least, David would have needed to have gone to Winston and said, hey, I'd like to write this letter. Is it
mm,
okay? But he didn't. I suspect from the tone of the letter and the nature of what he received from the UN, he got a bit het up under the collar, as David is wont to do, and to sort of lash out. So yeah, he was wrong to do it. Um, there would have been other ways he could have achieved it, but it does look untidy. As for the
Okay.
UN, yeah, sorry.
Actually, can I just ask about the mechanics of that? So say, for example, you had a bill that you were promoting through Parliament and the UN wrote to the government and said, Simon O'Connor's bill sucks, it's useless, it shouldn't be even on the table. Is it appropriate for you to answer the UN, or are you saying that Winston, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, is always the one who has to respond? Because in my view, if you push David Seymour's buttons about a bill that he's championing and shepherding through Parliament, why shouldn't he be able to respond?
Sorry, just had my stepdaughter knocking on the door. So it's different MP to minister. I think that's the really important thing here. David and Winston are ministers, and the ministers are very particular areas. And so when a certain area is being discussed, in this case, engagement with the UN, you use the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Just as David would be upset if someone was coming to talk to him about regulations, if another minister was writing about that.
Right.
As an MP, you don't require a minister to write on your behalf. And so that's why I said at the start, had David chosen to write his letter as the leader of the ACT Party, or just David Seymour MP for Epsom, he'd have been fine. Still would have been slightly awkward for the government, not a great look, but he could have done that. Instead, he did it as the minister, and a minister not responsible for the foreign affairs space. But no, the UN could write whatever they wanted to me and say whatever you want, but it's his role as minister, and you just keep in your lane.
Okay, and just comment on the UN. Steve already undermines, probably preempts what you're going to say. The UN's just a woke pandering organisation of unelected officials. Would you like to add to that, Simon, or has Steve summed it up in one sentence?
I think we've found the new host for political playback. I can retire. No, good on you, Steve.
I love the dogs.
Yeah, look, the UN has a role to play overall in the world, but it just continues to extend itself more and more in interfering in sovereign states. I'm with Chris Luxon on this. I think what they've written is a whole lot of bumpkin, and they could basically, excuse the French, they just should bugger off. They're inserting themselves into domestic New Zealand politics. And making, it's not really even an opinion in a sense, they're just picking up on one side of the Indigenous argument and ramming it home. And again, who is this person who wrote the report? I mean, why are you interfering in our country? Where do you come from? What is your expertise? And by the way, there's a whole lot of other countries in the world that probably need a bit more attention than New Zealand, but they avoid those. You end up with absurd situations, Bob, and it's not this particular one, but you end up with absurd situations with human rights abusing countries like Iran, like China, like Saudi Arabia, opining in the UN onto countries like New Zealand. And it's absolutely bonkers. And I think it's one of the reasons people are sick and tired of the United Nations.
All right, let's get on to a topic a bit more up your alley, drugs. And so this is interesting. An investigation underway after Cannabis Cafe, a cake was taken to staff lunch at a hospital. Apparently 2 of them ended up in hospital as a result of it. So it must have been pretty grunty drugs in the cake. And the person who brought the cake to the hospital has resigned. I'm even surprised they got to work on time if they're smoking dope. But not a good look, isn't it? I saw the Minister of Health, Simeon Brown, saying just completely unacceptable, sort of saying what we all thought, wasn't it?
Oh, it's totally unacceptable, and good on Simeon front-footing it and calling it out. I mean, it's wrong on so many levels. I mean, as you say, first and foremost, a harmful drug, and as you say, 2 people needing treatment. So a harmful drug being brought into a hospital. But even taking, if you will, the cannabis out of the equation, putting substances into a cake and not informing people. I mean, let's be fair, you don't turn up and say, look, there's a cup of flour, an egg, and a cup of milk.
Yeah.
But when you're putting extra substances in, you should tell people. I mean, there's just, again, even to take the cannabis out of the equation, this is very irresponsible behavior. So I'm glad the person's left or been sacked, rightly.
Yeah. Although, I mean, this is part of the normalisation of the drug, which the media are working hard on. I want to give you an example of that in just a sec. Although, is putting sherry in the Christmas cake, is that in the same category? I think you get away with it, because the cooking process.
Well, that's twofold, isn't it? Yeah, the alcohol that you put into your baking burns off.
Yeah.
It's no
Not that
longer
I do.
alcoholic.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
I was going to say,
No.
what's going on? But, it's expected.
Yeah.
If someone brought in a plum pudding, reasonable chance that it's got brandy or something in it in the cooking process. You don't expect a cake to come with cannabis in it. Well, certainly not in a hospital, maybe at a Green Party retreat.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had it at our staff meeting yet, so I better just warn the staff. Interesting, in the Sunday Star Times, there was this lovely article about magic mushrooms being a life-saving drug. And ironically, the next day, we had this article in the New Zealand Herald. This guy was high on magic mushrooms when he crashed the vehicle with a child on his lap, putting them both at risk. And it wasn't, it was a classic example of, where they always say, oh, we're locking up people for smoking a joint. It wasn't just the magic mushroom that was the problem. It was also the fact that he was committing forgery with another person's bank card that he'd stolen in a burglary. So it's always this combination of crimes going on. You've actually written another example of a very good reason to watch, read and listen, is that you've written a very good article on magic mushrooms on our website, just looking at, countering this kind of media narrative that it's, a life-saving drug. As we heard, cannabis apparently is a life-saving drug and heals every illness that you've got, including stub toes. But in fact, magic mushrooms is actually quite risky, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite risky. I mean, in and of themselves. So they're a psychedelic from a particular type of mushroom. And, the promoters of it at the moment usually have business interests.
Yep.
But they're
Follow the money.
pushing at the moment something called microdosing. So just a little bit of a psychedelic will help people with depression and so forth. But you're instantly seeing, and we write about it on the website, is it doesn't stop at the little microdosing arguments for very particular symptoms or disorders. It starts to expand. Oh, well, actually now, larger doses of psychedelics or magic mushrooms will help with this and this and this.
Yeah.
Sort of a ubiquity to it. The harms are always downplayed. And as we were writing, because it's coming out of America, and I think they've made the right statement, once you put the veneer of medical legitimacy around a product like cannabis or like magic mushrooms, it's sending a signal to wider society that it's okay. People ignore take a little bit of this for this condition to go, well, if the doctors are prescribing it, I should use it too. And one of the examples we took from overseas was a 15-year-old high, if that's the right word, I'm not sure what one is on magic mushrooms, threw themselves off a crane because they're it just has a major effect. And even users say you've got to be really careful about when you use it and where you use it. And these are people who like the stuff. They're going, gosh, you just don't do it in the street. You need to be in a safe place. You can't be anxious. But again, you don't get much of that in mainstream media. It's just, it's this wonder drug.
In
That
fact,
was my bad
in New
attempt at
Zealand,
German.
and we've had French and we've had German so far tonight. You're going, well, this is an international, this is almost like the United Nations. Actually, Sandy says, funniest comment today, Simon, drugs at the Green Party retreat. And Nancy Margaret says, just put me off mushrooms for good. I think everybody's been put off mushrooms. I had this conversation at lunchtime, actually. Everybody's been put off mushrooms. They're not ordering it because of that case in Australia. A few people have commented on that. All right. Look, we're just about out of time. Just very quickly, these last two topics. Firstly, the story about online gambling. So there's a bill going through Parliament, and interestingly, the Greens have voted with the coalition. There we go. Even Radio New Zealand can't spell. Coalition government to pass first reading. So this is a bill that is going to regulate online gambling. 15 licenses. Apparently, now this is what the interesting thing was that apparently the license for the online casino needs age verification to ban under 18s. I thought age verification was an impossibility, and that was the whole argument against the whole social media issue. So I'm fascinated by that, but I'll be watching that. But the Problem Gambling Foundation thinks that usage of online gambling will increase rather than decrease, and they want provisions to ban the use of credit cards and for people to actually commit in advance how much they're going to spend and how long they're going to stay online. So some form of protection, because it tends to be those who can least afford it that do the gambling. Just what's your comments on this? Did you hear any chatter around this when you were in Parliament?
Actually, I was quite involved with it because I was the Shadow Minister for Internal Affairs at one point and actually spent quite a bit of time thinking and pondering into this space. I mean, look, online gambling is harmful by and large, although, of course, some people enjoy it quite responsibly. But the horse has bolted is what I would say in terms, it's here. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. Online gambling is all around us. So we do have to regulate. So I think the government's doing the right thing. I'm sort of surprised that the Greens are supporting it. I'm pleased they are, but I'm surprised because normally the Greens position is, it has to be perfect. But in this case, they've said, look, we're happy to work with the government. I think the Problem Gambling Foundation is mostly right. As I say, I think they just have to accept it's around. And other people, I guess, going to find VPNs and other ways to get around the 15 regulated anyway. But things like predetermining how much you're going to spend, time limits, those are actually good things. But I would imagine, and I haven't read the bill, Bob, but I would assume there's going to be regulatory powers within it so that a government could increase the safeguards. But look, online gambling's a reality. And so the government's right to try and, put some sort of framework around it.
And one of the provisions is to contribute 1.24% of profits to a levy. 1.24% of profits, not of income, of profits. So, I'm not sure that's going to solve the problem. Look, we will watch that one. Just one quick one that we can cover just in 2 minutes, and that is there's been quite a bit of chatter just in the last week around homeschools. Apparently, the number of kids that are homeschooled has doubled in the last 22, 23 years. So we've got about 11,500 children being homeschooled, and they say it's a bit of a growth area because people are concerned with what's happening in schools, more children with additional needs, system isn't keeping up, teachers are stressed, and perhaps the indoctrination. The other one was homeschooling kids were getting an unfair deal because when they compete in sports against other schools, they don't get the awards because they aren't affiliated with a school because there's no registered school called home school. So that was interesting. And then just the last one, apparently the dumbest idea in history, which was open plan schools, in my view, the government has decided to shut the door on that because they've figured out that actually they're a bit chaotic and kids don't like, there's too many distractions and too much noise. Any of those three issues that you want to comment on? Just firstly, the growth in homeschools, the sort of one rule against homeschooling sporting kids, and open plan in classrooms, and maybe that's why some parents are preferring homeschooling. Anything to sum up those?
No, only kidding. I look really quickly.
Are you on dinner?
No, not. I'm actually getting ready to do another podcast record from someone in the UK. So our time zones are about to align. So no, I'm not on dinner. Hey, look really quickly. The one around homeschoolers and sports, common sense. Hopefully there's a way to make that policy rather than having to pass a law. The homeschooling, it doesn't surprise me when you think of the quality of education in general. The behavioural problems that are happening in school, so we think bullying and so forth. And I think you're right, you mentioned indoctrination. I think a lot of parents are getting sick and tired of their kids being indoctrinated on a whole variety of topics rather than just doing maths and English. And in fact, even as I say that, Bob, that the curriculum now is fraught with ideology in those areas. Math is no longer just about math. It has to actually be trying to link to colonial narratives or decolonization narratives and so on. So you've got all of these absurdities. And on the last one, look, I was in the government at the time. It was John Key and Nikki Kay who were great proponents of those, what do they call them again? The barns.
Well, no, what they call them, they call them modern learning environments. That's the trendy word. Yes.
That's right. I was grasping for it. I couldn't remember. But the modern learning environments, at the time, there wasn't much evidence of any. It was just seen as novel, and it's the government doing something. And, it was helping the then minister create something new. Looked like she was busy. It was something to focus on. As I said, there was no evidence it was working or otherwise, so you couldn't criticize it, and just looked dynamic. But teachers then, as they do now, are saying, if you've got 90 students in this massive barn, it doesn't matter how many teachers are there, you can't really keep an eye on all of them or help and support them all.
No. Okay, very good. Look, we need to go. Just very quickly, a reminder, forumonthefamily.nz, amazing lineup of speakers, going to be a great gathering of social conservatives. You need to register. It's filling up fast. It's only just about 6 weeks away, forumonthefamily.nz. And have we got a treat for you next week, because we're getting rid of me, and look at this lineup. We have got guest panelist Tanya Onkovich, who is going to be with you, Simon, on Political Playback. So there's going to be a huge audience for that particular show. I'm actually up in the States at the SoConCon, which is the Social Conservative Conference, massive one in Indianapolis. So I will be there for next week. So Simon's got a very busy week. He's going to need a holiday after next week. He's going to have to really, hold the fort. So well done, Simon. Anyway. I
love that image, by the way. It looks like light and dark, good and evil. Have you noticed?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, it does actually. Angelic, and what's the opposite? Anyway, right, that's all we've got time for. Have a good night, Simon. Thank you, team, for watching. Political Playback will be next Thursday night at 5 o'clock. Special lineup. Really looking forward to having Tanya on. But anyway, have a great night. Thanks for watching.